Okay, here we are. So this is Illustrator. When you open up, it should look something like this. Um, it will look a little bit differently for you, probably because this is your first time opening it. But essentially, what we want to get to is the Create New. The Create New button, or we can go up here to our drop-down menu and go to New right here. I'm going to click the Create New, and that will bring us to the new document window. And there's a bunch of stuff here. Most of this we're not going to modify at all. It doesn't really matter too much the size of the image that we're creating, but we just want it to be about a standard size. So usually what I say is about the size of a sheet of paper. So about 8.5 by 11, something close to that. We have 12 by 12 here, and that's fine because essentially we're going to be resizing our image to fit our, or resizing our canvas, excuse me, to fit our image that we bring in. So I'm just going to click that. It's going to put 12 by 12 over here. I'm going to make sure that it says inches. Orientation doesn't matter too much. We're not going to change any of this other stuff right here. So we're just going to click create, and that will create our new canvas here. And we get the stuff we don't need right now out of the way. And so this is our canvas. The white area is our canvas. The gray area is what's called just our workspace, the rest of our artboard. And this is essentially our first Adobe program. So I'm going to explain a lot of basic stuff that will carry over into Photoshop, which is our next program. First off, the tools will always be over here on the left-hand side. Our image that we're working with will always be, essentially the middle area. The right-hand side will be our palettes. A lot of those are not here right now, but we will see those a little later, especially the layers palette, which will be always the most important in Illustrator and Photoshop. And then the tool options will kind of run across the top up here, and our drop-down menus above that. So they're all up here. Bunch of stuff to get to that we can get to from up here. Okay, so first off, we need to get our image and bring it in, drop it into here, and then sort of secure it. So let's do that first. I'm going to go and grab an image. We're going to go to File up here at the top, and we're going to go File, Place. We're not going to go Open, not New, none of that stuff. We're just going to go to File, Place. So by placing, we're going to be able to go and into our characters folder here and then grab whichever character we want to start with. I'm going to pick SpongeBob, and we're going to click place, and then that should, there we go, give me a little thumbnail of SpongeBob. Now I can click if I want. I can just click on the mouse and it will drop him at full size, or I can click and drag and it will let me drop him to the size that I want. I'm going to go ahead and just click, and that will drop him at absolutely full size. That's good. All right, and then you'll notice a few things. Number one, SpongeBob has shown up at whatever size he is. Number two, he has a box around him. This is what we call a bounding box. This is very important for Illustrator, as the bounding box shows you that you have something selected. We're going to be doing a lot of selections and messing with a lot of different shapes, and we want to know which ones that we're messing with at any specific moment. And the way we do that is by seeing the bounding box around the specific shape. You'll also notice that it has this sort of X over it, and what the X refers to is that the image is not embedded. So if you look up here, you'll see this little button right here that says Embed. The embed button basically, well, if something is not embedded, which SpongeBob is currently not embedded, what that means is that he's not actually embedded into your project file. Now, this is way more crucial if you're working on campus, in on-campus classes, and then you go home to work on your own computer or something along those lines. Because when you take your file home, if you don't have SpongeBob embedded in that file, Illustrator is going to say, I can't find the SpongeBob image, where is it? Because Illustrator knows that when you're on the computer at school, that the SpongeBob image is just on the desktop or in your folder or wherever it is. And when you're working in Illustrator, it pulls that SpongeBob image into the file while you're working. But once you go somewhere else, once you go home, once you go to the lab, once you go, anywhere else to a different computer, Illustrator doesn't have that file, and then of course can't find it. So you either have to not have it and just kind of get screwed over, or you have to have it somewhere and then alert Illustrator to where it is. The way to bypass that is just to embed the image. So it's very simple. All you have to do is make sure that it's selected, which it will be when you drop it in, and you just come up here and you just hit the embed button. Once you hit embed, it will take away the X, and now SpongeBob is embedded into our image. Very simple. Okay, the next step, we need to resize our canvas. Our canvas is the white area to fit the image. Now, we could recreate SpongeBob right here, but it's kind of ugly to have all of this extra white space, right, that we don't really need. We want to have a little bit of white space. Like if we put SpongeBob right there, we want to have a little bit more than, for instance, right here or on the top up here where SpongeBob's kind of running into the edge. So usually what I do is give it a little bit of breathing room around all four sides. I always just push it up against the top left corner here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to resize our canvas from the bottom right and just pull it right up to here, and then it'll be resized to the correct size. So how do we do that? Okay, we do that with the Artboard tool. That's right here. You see the little, it's like a blank page, and then it has a little crosshair up at the top left. So we're going to click on that. You'll notice that when we click on it, it grays out the outside area, and it gives us a dotted line here around our artboard or our canvas. Now, anywhere where we hover over that line, we're going to get these black arrows. And the black arrows allow us to push and pull the edge of our artboard to wherever we want. So I'm going to push it up to get right there, give it a little bit of breathing room around the outside. Same thing there. And that looks good to me. Okay, so once we have our canvas to the size that we need it, all we're going to do is hit escape on the keyboard. When I hit escape, it goes right back to normal view, and now we have our SpongeBob placed in, our SpongeBob embedded, and our canvas resized to the correct size. Okay, the next step is to basically lock SpongeBob in place. So we kind of like, push pin him to the canvas. So he can't move, he can't be resized, we can't accidentally do anything to him. That way he'll stay in the same spot while we trace over top of him. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring up our layers palette if it's not already visible for you. All of the palettes right here are under the window drop down. So this is the window drop down menu. We're going to go to layers. It'll pop the layers up over here, and then we're going to let's look at what we have here. So currently we have layer 1, and we can see that there's a little thumbnail of SpongeBob. There's a little arrow. There's a blue bar here. There's an empty square, and then there's a square here with an eyeball in it. Okay, those are all kind of important. We're going to talk about these two later. This is the layer with SpongeBob in it. If we click the arrow, it will open up the layer, and it will show us all of the sublayers. Currently, there's only one sublayer, and that is our SpongeBob image, right there. The blue square here shows that SpongeBob is selected. If I click off, you can see the blue square disappears. If I select SpongeBob, you can see that the blue square shows me that we're in layer 1, and we've selected image right here, this SpongeBob image, okay? The eyeball, you can see it says, if you hover over a lot of stuff in Illustrator, like if I hover over this or anything else, it will tell me what it is. So that's a good way just to kind of like, if you're curious about what something is, just kind of put the mouse over it and let it sit for a second. It will tell you a little bit about it. So this says, toggle visibility, command click to toggle view mode. So you won't need to worry about this view mode thing, but you can, click on and off to turn that layer or that sublayer on and off. Okay. Now the other square here is to lock, editable when blank. So blank means there's nothing in it, which is right now, which means that this layer is editable, which means that if I click and drag, we can accidentally move or purposefully move our SpongeBob wherever we want. Now we want to keep that from happening because we've got him right in the spot in the space we want him, and we're going to start drawing on top of him. So what we want to do is click right there and lock that layer. And now when we come over here, I'm clicking and trying to drag him, and all it gives me is the pencil with a little no symbol. And basically what that means is that we cannot edit this layer because it's locked. We can go back anytime and unlock or lock a layer, so it's not something that we can undo, so that's great. But what it means is that we've now protected this layer from accidentally doing anything to it, which is great because once we start drawing, we're not going to want to accidentally move this first layer because that would screw up everything else we're doing. Okay. Now, we have layer 1, that's going to be our SpongeBob layer, and then we're going to want to create a new layer to start drawing it, because we can't draw in layer 1 because it's locked. So we're going to come down here to this little button right here. That's the Create New Layer button. We're going to click it, and we're going to create layer 2. Layer 2 is red, so everything we create will have a little red outline on it. These colors are arbitrary. You can change those if you want to. It just is a good way of, it's color coding essentially. So when you click on something, you can tell what layer it is by the color of the outline around it. All right, now what I want to do, I'm going to break the drawing down into a separate video, but before we get to drawing, I want to open up an example file of SpongeBob here and show you how we're going to break everything down. So I'm going to go to File, Open. I'm going to go to my desktop here and I'm going to open this. And this is essentially the same image. This is a student version that I just had laying around. And I'm going to zoom in here on the arm. Okay, now the way we've always been taught to draw since we were little kids is that you draw, you use your pen or your pencil and you draw this black line, right? You draw this black line around everything, and then you draw this line, and then you come back in with your crayon or whatever and you fill in the yellow, right? And then you fill in the white. Well, obviously the white's usually the paper, but for intents and purposes, you fill in the white with your crayon. This project is a little bit different, and I explained it a little bit in the rubric video, and I'm going to show it here, so hopefully it makes a little more sense. But when I select something, you can see that it shows us the shape itself. Okay? And now if I take these two shapes, the sleeve here and the actual arm itself, I'm just going to drag them out. Now see what we have here? This is what I was talking about with the Mega Man image. You're creating a silhouette of the outermost color. In this case, it's SpongeBob's arm, and the outermost color is black. He has a black outline around the arm. You're creating that shape by doing one line all the way around the exterior of the shape, and then filling it with the color that is visually there, which is black, right? Then you're coming back and taking another shape, drawing that shape, and then putting that shape on top of the original shape. And now you can see these are two shapes, but what it looks like, the visual sort of illusion that we're creating here, is that this white shape is actually a cutout of this black shape, when in fact it's not. It's two shapes that are layered on top of each other. That's why I mentioned the idea of a sandwich, right? So the black shape here is the bread, and then the white shape is, I don't know, a slice of cheese or a piece of meat or whatever, right? It sits right on top of it. The yellow is the same thing. Sits right on top of the black, and when we layer it on top of it, the negative space that's presented right here, this little cutout and this little cutout here, right? This one here, all this stuff. The layering on top of this big solid black shape makes the yellow look like it has a black ring around it, a black stroke. And that is the preface for creating this entire image. Now if I just, there's some extra stuff here we don't need, but let's take a look at the actual sponge itself, right? If I take this shape, and I can just pull it out here, you can see that this is just one solid sponge shape. And then on top of that, they've put this shape, right? I can just throw that back there. And then on top of that, they have all of these circle shapes. So you may not sort of register all this completely to begin with, but what I recommend is going and trying to start drawing, and then if you get a little lost, come back to this video and take another look at this. Okay, it's very easy to see it, like for example with the eyes. So there's a black shape. I'm just going to layer them like this, right? See that? They're all different shapes layered one on top of the other, and the way that they are oriented shows through to create things like outlines and highlights, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so hopefully this is making a little more sense. We're going to get into the drawing of everything in just a moment. You've seen, I want to talk a little bit about the navigation tools. These are the two main navigation tools, the hand tool and the zoom tool. The hand tool, you can go over here and click on either of these, but I never do. I actually just use the keyboard shortcuts. So for example, the keyboard shortcut for the hand is the space bar. So I can press the space bar here, and while I have the space bar pressed down, I get the hand tool, and the hand tool just allows me to drag the image around wherever I want. This is really handy, no pun intended there, for if you're zoomed in on something. So if I'm zoomed in here on the eye and I want to move down to the mouth, I can press the space bar and then click and drag and move to wherever I want to be. The zoom tool is Z on the keyboard. If you hover over it, you'll see that it says zoom tool and Z. That's the keyboard shortcut. So I press Z, I get the zoom tool. If I click, it will always zoom in. If I press the option key on the keyboard, you can see that I get the minus, and then if I click, it will zoom out. I can also click and hold, and then move left and right to zoom in or zoom out. So these are really, really super useful navigation tools, things that you will use a lot. So keep those in mind. Okay, so back to our Untitled over here. This is where you're going to start working. Now, just to refresh, you're going to open the program. You're going to create a document, a new document. You're going to file place your image. You're going to resize the canvas using the Artboard tool. You're going to embed your image. And then you're going to lock your layer, layer number 1, and create a new layer, layer number 2. And that's the layer we're going to start drawing in. So the drawing will be the next video.